Actually, this is way too tight for my size. I mean, the space between the TV and this. All right. Come. Nanti jemput Babi dulu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Thanks for being with us, and Yang Berhormat Datuk Menteri Besar Johor, Datuk Wan Hafiz is also with us. We have gone into some of the final legworks for JS-SEZ. As you might have been aware, that the negotiation between the two countries are already in the final stage, with the deadline for submission in September. And at the same time, Johor State government and the federal governments have been working in parallel to bring JS-SEZ to investors around the world. And today's engagement is part and parcel of that. MB has been in Singapore. My visit to China was predominantly to get the investors coming to JS-SEZ. As we have shared during the session just now, I think the value proposition for international investors are obvious. It's a common sense. JS-SEZ will be able to offer the best of both worlds, with investors having access to the sophistication of Singapore, but the cost and resource advantages of Johor. Once an agreement is signed, we hope we will be able to get the early takers that will come to JS-SEZ. And we are confident, looking at the interest expressed so far, that JS-SEZ will be the launchpad for ASEAN market for investors in the next 5 to 10 years. So I think with that opening, may I pass to Yang Berhormat Menteri Besar Johor.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Is on ya. Pertama-tamanya, bagi pihak Kerajaan Negeri Johor, saya ingin mengucapkan setinggi-tinggi penghargaan kepada pihak Kementerian Ekonomi yang telah mengadakan sesi forum yang saya tengok begitu baik dianjurkan pada pagi ini, yang melibatkan pelbagai pemegang taruh, potential investors, chambers dan juga banks, yang rata-rata datang bukan saja untuk mendengar apa yang dibentangkan oleh kami berdua, tetapi lebih penting daripada itu adalah untuk memberikan pandangan mereka tentang apa yang mereka inginkan ataupun perlukan untuk sama-sama berganding bahu memastikan agar JS-SEZ ini menjadi satu realiti dan satu kejayaan bukan saja untuk Johor, malah untuk Malaysia, Singapura dan serantau, insya-Allah. Jadi kita mengambil pandangan dan feedback yang diberikan oleh mereka ini dengan hati yang amat terbuka untuk memastikan apa yang kita laksanakan dalam tempoh yang mendatang akan benar-benar memberi manfaat bukan saja kepada pelabur-pelabur, tetapi lebih penting daripada itu ialah rakyat Malaysia secara keseluruhan, insya-Allah.
Soalan? Yes. I was actually pleasantly surprised because it didn't require much efforts to convince them of the value proposition. So the biggest value proposition of JS-SEZ is it's a launch pad to ASEAN market, because the world understands that ASEAN is going to be a very influential market in the next 5 to 10 years. Most likely, it's poised to even overtakes Europe, for example, as a market. So I think that value proposition sells by itself. The ask, so to speak, from investors, it has to be very much private driven, because investment decisions are mostly done by VC and PE funds, which back all these companies. And the kind of companies that we want to encourage to come and build the ecosystem in JS-SEZ is precisely the high-tech driven, high-value content industries that we are lacking. And they are almost entirely interconnected with the PE and VC funds. And therefore, I think we need to be able to remap our whole processes to keep abreast with how such businesses operate and the ecosystem in which they thrive. And those are the processes that we are looking now to make sure that it's very VC and PE friendly. And at the same time, I think all the other debottlenecks that we have to do are given. We have to make sure the ease of movements of people, of goods, of services happen as expected. But in fact, I share with the forum today that the authorities here, the financial institutions, have to recalibrate our understanding of how investments are made in today's world. It is no longer necessarily done as a huge part of a conglomerate's expansion plan. It is very much very agile, and therefore speed is an issue. Flexibility is an issue. And exit is an issue for them as well. So the last few months have been very fruitful for federal and state governments, because we have been talking directly to prospective investors, and these points will be taken into account as we refine further how the JS-SEZ is going to run. But certainly, I think we will move away from the previous approach of focusing a lot on the infrastructure and on the plot and everything, and then selling the plots, because the plot will sell by itself if you convince the investors and the ecosystem to come. They will take care of the plots and everything.
Your trip to China recently, did it also include selling the JS-SEZ concept to the Chinese investors, and what was their reaction?
Their reaction has been really good. I mean, in fact, I think 50% of it was on 50%. I met about 100 companies in that 7 days. They are various type of companies. About 30% of them are basically the hedge fund, the PE VC funds type. These people have been funding the growth of Chinese industries for the last 2 decades. The reception has been actually beyond my own expectation. And from Chinese perspective, they see ASEAN as a very large market. And the more integrated the market as ASEAN, the better for them. And I think from the Western perspective, Western investors, ASEAN is also, apart from the market, ASEAN is also a very important access to the Far East market as well. So I think it makes common sense, and whether it's Chinese investors or whether it's European or Western investors, that value proposition is perhaps the best selling point of JS-SEZ. What we need to refine and iterate as we go along is to manage and transition, as I mentioned, to meet their expectation, because things do happen very quickly for them. So if things are slowed down by bureaucracy, by red tapes, or if there's too much planning imposed on them, I think that's the kind of things that we have to be careful. But I was more convinced of the value proposition myself once I actually met the prospective investors, and I'm sure that was exactly MB's experience as well. Yeah.
Going back on what you said earlier,
Mm.
September, does that mean that the negotiations have to conclude by September to take and taking time for them to complete? Secondly, on Malaysia's side, have you sort of come to a point where Johor and federal government have sort of already have a framework of what will be Malaysia's proposal to bring to Singapore? And have you sort of finalized the financial incentives that you want to give to the companies?
September is the signing. That is the deadline we are working on. It's extremely tough deadline. September is actually signing. In fact, we will sign and unveil it. That's the plan now, even before the annual retreat. So because of that, Johor and federal government has finalized our ask and our framework. It was, I think, brought to cabinet, I think is in May, if I'm not mistaken, and it was already communicated to Singapore governments. And as far as the nitty-gritty of the incentives, what is going to be offered in terms of fiscal, I think we are working in parallel. So what has been communicated to the Singapore government is the framework of the agreement and our ask from our side. We are now waiting for Singapore to come back. But all this, I think, because the structure is in place, we are confident we will be able to complete the negotiation to finalize and sign the agreement in time for the deadline. As for the specific incentive for fiscal, I'm talking about fiscal incentive for JS-SEZ, it has all the engagements, all the workshops, all the feedback are now being incorporated. The final stage is between the various ministries and MOF and MITI and State of Johor to put together a specific package for JS-SEZ, and most probably it can be announced in the budget speech. You know, so JS-SEZ obviously is, if you look at the momentum, if it signs in September, and then after that comes a budget speech, the agreements will provide the overall framework of the cooperation and commitments from both countries, but the specific of the fiscal incentives most probably will be included in the budget speech.
Minister, has the geographic scope of the SEZ been confirmed as
Dah. Cuma kita tak boleh cakap ya dah.
Okay, so just to add on to YB Refugee, in terms of geographical location, I think it's being finalized, but we'll wait for the official announcement nanti.
Yeah.
Cuma just to add on sikit, in terms of things that keeps cropping up when we meet potential investors, is about talent, ease of doing business, and also ease of movement of goods, services, and people. we want to give assurance that these issues are being addressed, being discussed in a very detailed manner, so that once the SEZ is launched, inshallah, things will be a lot smoother through the JS-SEZ initiative. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Point about the ease of people traveling, any plans for passport clearance on both sides?
All options are being discussed at the moment. And,
But in fact, it has been announced. QR code, kan?
yes,
Yeah.
QR code is just one of it,
Hmm.
but there are other things I think is
Yeah.
being discussed in the workshop.
yeah.
Thank you.
So I think once the agreements are signed in September, then I think you will see a more detailed plans for each of the specific area. Ease of people's movement. What exactly is going to be done and so on. But I think it's quite obvious. The whole idea is in phases. We would like to see a free flow of people, movement and services between Singapore and Johor. What needs to be ironed out and planned is the sequencing and phasing, because it cannot be done immediately. But once the two countries have committed to debottleneck, and then the respective agencies for both governments will have to deliver those debottlenecks in phases.
So the first phase, when do you expect you can proceed within, let's say, the first quarter of next year?
I think let's wait for the because in you mean what is the
To sign the agreement
yeah
in September.
yeah
For you to start, like you say, phases, right? So the
Yeah.
first phase of, like, sort of say, the
Yeah.
economic zone is up and running.
Mm.
Would you say next year is possible for the first half?
I think let's wait for the agreement, because I have a very difficult job to juggle, because the delivery is actually by the respective ministries, kan. So kalau you're talking about immigration, it's basically by home. Kalau transport, by transport. So what we are doing now is we're getting the commitments at the highest level of both governments, and then respectively the counterparts belong to a respective working group, and then they will negotiate. But I think some of that has already been ongoing, and we will be able to provide the timeline of what to expect, in phases once the agreement is signed. But I think we need to go through that signing, and then we have a full picture of the phases by then.
Okay.
That one I think you have to ask MOF, because I think it was already been developed and discussed, I think, separately by MOF before the JS-SEZ was mooted lah. So I think that is pretty much not much. It's not my brief lah. I think you have to ask MOF. Yeah.
What about in terms of currency exchange? Would there be any changes, or would there be such special kind of package for JS-SEZ? And in terms of profit repatriation for investors?
No, I think currency is currency lah. I think that was not discussed at all lah. I don't think there'll be a Johor ringgit ke apa lah. Kan. So currency, I think each country would like to maintain our monetary policy lah. And the focus is very much about the free flow of people, goods and services to be able to harness Singapore and Johor to integrate as one economic unit. And so I think in terms of repatriation of capital and so on, of course, we work within the existing framework that each country has. But as we were sharing during the session just now, we also understand that a lot of the international businesses that we are vying to come to JS-SEZ, they are PE and VC backed. So they are not your traditional MNC type where an investment is done at the HQ and then an investment made in Malaysia is just seen as an expansion of capacity. A lot of the companies that we would like to welcome, because they are the ones in high tech, in the cutting edge of the technology. A lot of them are PCs and PE and VCs back. And when it comes to PE and VCs, this issue about capital movement is an issue that we will have to recalibrate, and we will see how to remap to make sure that the ecosystem can keep abreast with how such businesses operate nowadays. So those discussions, I think, hence why engagement sessions like this are very important, because we also would like to know how the existing framework functions, and then if there are pain points, how the government can manage those pain points for them. No, no, because no, I think the plan is the plan. Kan? I think the whatever we talked before was the cumulative potential of what the special economic zone can offer. But I think once we sign and now we are moving into operationalizing the zone, I think we will have to see it's better that we focus on the conversions. And then I think if we were to share numbers, it's going to be new investments coming into the zone rather than talk about, this is the economic potential, how much it can create and so on. So I think we should be able to share the numbers in sometime down the line. But the focus now is to sign the agreement, get all the nitty-gritty in place, and then work earnestly to get the investors coming. No lah, saya ada kat parlimen, nanti boleh tanya kat parlimen lah. Yeah. I mean, the whole approach to JS-SEZ combines fiscal and non-fiscal lah. Non-fiscal tu, I think dia termasuk lah ease of peoples, the immigration, the visas and so on. And the fiscal incentives, tax break and so on, are being discussed and finalized internally. Then we hope to be able to submit to MOF to be included in the budget speech, because the timing is just nice. We can't announce until we, selalu ditanya sekarang, what is the tax break? We can't announce until we sign the JS-SEZ. Without signing in September, there is no JS-SEZ, because this is a binding cooperation between two countries. It's not Malaysia punya saja kan. So we have to wait for it to be signed. And I think once it's signed, then the timing is just right, because I think a few weeks after that will be budget speech. Then we will be able, we hope that we will submit to MOF and to PM. And I'm confident that JS-SEZ fiscal and non-fiscal incentive will feature in the budget speech as well.
Just on that point about cooperation between two countries, you mentioned that Singapore is yet to respond. Has Singapore given its input or feedback on what?
Yeah, they have. I mean, the negotiation is ongoing now. And I think the senior officials from both countries, we're all burning midnight oil, because the timeline is very, very challenging. We have 2 months, and the negotiation at the senior officials are ongoing for both countries. I think it's best to keep behind closed doors what are being negotiated. But the discussion is ongoing now, and so far I think we should be able to meet the timeline. Okay, soalan politik, very quickly, tanya dia.
Some have blamed about the fuel subsidy. What do you think happened in Singapore after the implementation?
No, I think you have to drill down to the nitty-gritty of the result. Nitty-gritty of the result is that there is no obvious swing in Malay support. Dalam PRN yang lepas, Malay support for PH candidate was about 22-23%. Currently pun about 22-23% juga. So walaupun majority tu nampak tinggi, actually there was no swing of support for Malays. Likewise, there is no swing of support for non-Malays. Chinese pun lebih kurang sama, about 90% voted for PH. Indian pun sama. The main difference this time around is the turnout rate. And turnout rate itu beza dia tu besar lah. Maksudnya di daerah mengundi yang majoriti Melayu, it hit as high as 80%. Di saluran dan daerah mengundi yang majoriti Cina ada dua lah. Satu sekolah menengah kebangsaan Taman Bandar Mutiara, satu lagi ialah Sungai Bakap kan. The saluran mengundi itu is as low as 45%. Jadi you are looking at the turnout rate of especially Chinese and then to a certain extent Indians are half of the Malay voters. Dalam keadaan yang sokongan tu tidak beralih. It's actually we are still deadlocked exactly as 1 year ago in terms of support kan. So I think that has to be established first. Then I think you can go to the next question. The next question is sama ada adakah ini disebabkan diesel and so on. I think we have to engage more with focus group with the non-Malay voters there to understand their motivation of not coming out. Tapi kalau dilihat kepada tahap sokongan pengundi Melayu, kalau betul soal diesel semua ini ada kesan besar kepada undian, then you would have expected PN to actually increase their share of vote. But it didn't. It remains exactly the same. It's about 22.78. Last year sebelum ada diesel pun macam itu, sekarang selepas diesel pun begitu kan. So I think we have to look at everything in totality kan. So as it is now, if we were to conclude the motivation for the non-Malays not to turn up lah, lower turnout, is it diesel? Is it other issues? I think that's something that we have to get more data on lah. Although I also have to point out, actually traditionally memang dalam PRK dan pilihan raya negeri, turnout rate of non-Malays memang selalunya lebih rendah. Sebab itu I think dia menyentuh Johor sikit lah. Contoh kalau macam PRN Johor kan. PRN Johor contohnya in 2022 kan, BN menang besar. Part of it is because sebenarnya pengundi bukan Melayu tu dia tak keluar. Tapi when it comes to PRU kemudian, about 7 months later, the turnout tu come back and dia rebalance the whole thing. So traditionally pun, memang pengundi bukan Melayu semasa PRK dan PRN memang historically have a lower turnout than Malay voters lah kan. Jadi I think is too early for us to conclude anything because the parameters are quite clear. First, memang tidak ada peralihan sokongan kepada siapa-siapa. We are exactly as we were almost a year ago. Secondly, the issue is sebenarnya turnout. Then of course, do we have enough information to say the non-Malays didn't turn out about diesel? I think that we need to go back and find out more. But yet at the same time, if diesel were a big issue, you don't get that with the Malays because the support level remains the same. So I think we will operate within those parameters. At PKR level, definitely we will get more data and information. But I think is a mixture of all. Well, when PH won successively before, that issue doesn't come out. And sebab itu, I think sama ada Kian Meng ke, KJ ke, or anyone lah, I have not read whatever their comments. I think we have to go back to the data and fact. And the data and fact is basically about turnout rate. Jadi I think we have to look everything in totality. When I was leading the election campaign for PKR, from successive loss in PRN Melaka and then PRN Johor, and then in PRU 2022, and then we did a lot better than what was expected. Dia tak ada pula KJ ke Kian Meng buat komen masa itu. Kan? I think so. I think we have to approach it a bit more scientifically, and therefore you have to look at the parameters and the data and so on. For the time being, to me, it's inconclusive. In fact, we are deadlocked. If anything, one thing that is certain is that the country has not moved forward in terms of political support for the last 12 to 15 months, whatever either sides are doing. And that, to me, is more worrying than anything else. It shows how polarized everything is. So I think you letaklah Hong Kian Meng ke jadi ke KJ ke apa, I don't think it's going to shift anything. And if anything, that worries me, the how deadlocked the polarization is. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
No. No update. Thank you. All right. No, tak ada dah. I dah lambat. I sebenarnya dia orang tengah tunggu untuk gulung di parlimen. Okay. All right.